I'm back. Did you miss me? Hi everyone. I'm sorry I haven't posted a video in a couple of weeks, but I had some things happen where my equipment failed. Basically, if you listened to any of my earlier videos, you may have heard the sound going in and out, kind of wobbly and all. Well, this should be fixed. Now, this being my 5th video, I feel a little bit more comfortable revealing a little thing about myself here and there. So the first thing I want to say is I have a confession to make. When I was a kid in the 70s, I listened to records on a record player that looked a lot like this. I know, don't panic. I know it's all plastic and cardboard looking, and mine didn't have all the neat little denim imprints on it like this one does. If you'll notice, the tone arm could never be adjusted. As you can see, it's just one big piece of plastic. If a record started skipping on this, what we did is we taped a penny to the head right above the needle to weigh the needle down more, which I know a lot of people would cringe about today. Never supposed to do that, because that would make the needle dig into the record. If you were really lucky, your parents or your friends' parents would have a console stereo a lot like this one. This was really nice because you could stack records on the middle spindle and let them drop and play one by one, so you wouldn't have to change the record every 20 minutes or so. You could play all speeds of records, 33, 78, and 45s, but it's rare that your parents would ever let you touch this because they wanted it taken care of, because it's a nice piece of furniture and they wanted it to last. If you were really, really lucky, your best friend's parents bought them a stereo rack system, which was coming into popularity in the 70s. You would have all the components in a glass case stacked on top of each other, with the record player on top, of course, and 2 floor speakers sitting on either side of it that were usually about 3 feet tall and about 1.5 feet wide, and it sounded amazing. I can remember sitting in my best friend's bedroom for hours on end while listening to all sorts of music that he introduced me to. Now, there were other options during those days, of course. There were other portables, much better than the first one that I showed you. As a matter of fact, my sister had one that looked an awful lot like this one here. This was handy because you could fold it up and the speakers would sit face down on the floor, and then when you were ready to play it, you would open it up. You would have the stereo speakers on either side of the cabinet, and this was actually kind of a neat little record player. But again, this is kind of the lower end. And then in the 80s, there was a popular style all-in-one that came out. Basically, it was a big block with cassettes on the bottom, an equalizer in the middle, the radio, and then the turntable on the top. And a lot of times, they would just forego the turntable and make it into a cassette only, and a lot of people had those too. I'm saying this because a lot of the vinyl community kind of likes to try to make people feel small for not using high-end equipment, and the vast majority of us growing up in the 70s and 80s, and even into the 90s really, didn't have high-end equipment. Heck, when you were a teenager, you were lucky enough, if you graduated from that little plastic one that I showed you earlier, to grab onto something like this. See, it's all nice and wood grained and fancy looking and all, and it served the purpose, and you know, we enjoyed it. All we wanted was something that sounded good that you could play records on, because records at the time were pretty much the only format. We did also have cassettes though, and well, here's what my first cassette player looked like. This is the exact model, and I loved it. The thing was bulletproof. Its speaker grill got dented up on occasion. Now, with the modern resurgence of records, a lot of companies have rushed out to make what I call entry-level record players, kind of not unlike the ones that I started out on. You know the brands, you know which ones I'm talking about. You're talking about like Jensen and Boytone and Crosley, the one that gets all the flack. Now, Crosley's and all those put out these so people could get into the record buying habit again. You know, it's something inexpensive. You don't have a lot of money. You just want to try it out. Yeah, you can sink $50, $60 into a record player, even less, really, and then go out and buy some records and play it on those, and that's good. Now, I do have a couple of criticisms on those. Basically, I've got a couple of suggestions. Number one, for those people who make entry-level systems, number one, include a diamond stylus. Why? The reason is very simple. What they normally include on the lower-end systems is a ceramic stylus, and they wear out fairly quickly within a period of like 3 to 4 months, especially if you're listening more than, say, a couple of hours a day. Granted, replacement needles or styluses aren't that expensive. They usually run about $10 a piece for the ones that go on these systems, but why have to buy one of those every 3 months when the manufacturers could just put in the diamond tip stylus for the same price? Everything would be well and good. I mean, you can always get a replacement diamond stylus when you first buy the system. Second thing I would suggest to manufacturers, especially to those whose record players play 33, 45, and 78s, is include a stylus to play the 78s. And why do I say this? Because the grooves on a 78 are wider than that of those on a 33 or a 45. So what happens when you play a 78 with a needle designed for a lesser speed of 45 or 33, what it does is the needle sits in the middle, but it doesn't stay in the middle because it's a wider channel that it's writing down. And so what it does is it bounces off the side of the grooves, and that not only damages the needle, but it takes chips off of the records as well. And we don't want chips coming off the records because that's going to cause hiss and eventually scratching on the record and make it sound like the old wind-up Victrolas always kind of had the propensity to sound, because they used actual needles. So those are my two pieces of advice for the manufacturer. Now, those are inexpensive ways to get into record collecting. A few other suggestions I have for people looking to start getting into record collecting is to go to places like yard sales, thrift stores. I know people cringe at the idea of thrift stores, but occasionally you do find some good things. And I've got an entire stack of records from a thrift store in there that I got for $1 each, and I'll show those off in a later video. Record stores in general tend to have a large used record section, and you could go to flea market. You can pick up records for like $1, $2, so you don't have to invest a lot of money in the beginning to get into record collecting. Now, as you grow, of course you're going to want to upgrade everything. You're going to get a better record player. You're going to get better speakers. You're going to get better everything else. If it gets you into record collecting, and if it's something that you enjoy, and it's something you can afford, do whatever's in your budget. That's the takeaway from all of this. I don't want anyone to walk away with a bitter taste in their mouth. There are a few of us that will stand behind the low-end equipment. I know there are. I'm going to champion it all the way. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button down below. Also, just go ahead and click on subscribe so that you'll be notified of future videos that I'm going to produce. Click that bell button down next to the subscribe button so you'll be notified the moment that they come out. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.